Scheduled for this date to order. And would the secretary have or the clerk have a roll call of officers, please?
J.C. Info,
Here?
Brenda Bonacera,
Here.
Thomas Bonacera,
Here.
Rudy Davis,
Here.
and Mr. Thomas Draskovic is not present.
Excused, I'm sure. Okay, we'll proceed with the approval and reading of the minutes from our secretary, Brenda. They were promulgated, so
Yeah. Do you want me
is
to?
there any corrections or additions to the ones that you have presented to you?
No.
No additions or corrections?
No.
The minutes will stand as read. Date approved today. So that'd be the 15th. And you have to write 2020, because if you just write 20, somebody's going to add something to the other in case you check or something.
So I read.
Right. All right. Since the last meeting, the mayor so kindly handed to us a project to research properties owned by the city. The committee has been very diligent, and I have in my hand probably, Mayor, the first time, a copy of all the existing deeds that exist in the county courthouse. Copies of which I've given to each one of my members and to Lynn. And there's 3 that we could not find. Lynn, I asked to research, and at this time I'd like to ask Lynn what he found out about these 3 mystery properties.
It's 2nd Street and Hibiscus. Those 2, we don't have any needs here. I went back to the property appraiser to try to see if they had anything. They did not. And then the 3rd one is submerged lands, which really, we'll probably have to go to the state for that, because the submerged lands were given to us by.
Can you go down the list for us and
Yeah.
tell which one it is?
The
on your-
third one down is submerged lands. And that was
Okay.
given to the city by the state
All right,
in the 70s. I do know that. And the city requested that. So we're gonna have to go back to them and find out where the deed would be to that, or it was, or how it was handled. So, 2nd Street Park, and 7th Street, we haven't found any deeds to them either. And then the Hibiscus Park.
and the 7th.
Yeah, and they're marked on the new updated sheet that I gave you.
That's, wow. But you're gonna research a little bit of that with the state? Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. Now, the discussion was put forth to us to find out whether these were viable for future sale or future disposal. Mayor, you had indicated later on that there was primarily 3 properties you were interested in.
Right.
Could you indicate to us what those 3
Sure.
were, please?
And just so you know, I did listen to your last conference. In fact, I listened to it twice, so I got everything that was said, and I'm quite familiar with what happened in terms of the detail. And what I was hearing last time, and Lynn updated me on the deeds, because I had asked for a copy at the council meeting. So I know you were missing the deeds as of the last time. He had some of them, but he didn't have other ones. So it looks like you've come up with all of them except for 3 of them now. Okay, that's great. So one of the comments you had made was that, this is a monumental project. It's not meant to be a monumental project. So to boil this down, and I think Glenn summarized it well, but since there's 3 of us here, we're not going to cross-talk. But the way I saw this is the properties that have the most value to them, to us, are 3 properties. It's the one that we're in right now, it's the marina, and it's what we call the White House, the house that's on Palm, is it? The next block over?
Cedar.
Cedar, okay. Where we use for temporary storage and city
Number
halls.
1, City Hall.
Yeah,
City Hall, the White House on Cedar, and the marina. Those are the 3 that are most viable. The other ones, I mean, can you put a dock on one of those parcels? Possibly. Is it gonna add any kind of real revenue to the city? Probably not. So if we have to boil this down in terms of timing, because timing is important, I heard about extensions, it's not my call in terms of the due date on this thing. The reason why we're trying to come up with an April due date is because we have to have, if any lands have to be sold or changed in terms of the usage, I think it's just sold actually, it has to go to the voters. And in order to do that, it has to go on a question. And deadline on that, don't hold me exactly, like August 12th, August 15th, that means final to the county election commission. So if we want to hit the presidential election, which is the only viable one that we could possibly hit this year, that was basically enough time to allow council to meet on this, because your recommendations come to council, then they have to decide what they want, council has to decide what they want to do. And then, if we like it, it has to go to our attorney, he has to draft it, it's a back and forth between them, so it could take a couple of months. So I'm not trying to give an artificial deadline. You might get an extra couple of weeks, but I don't think you have like 3 or 4 extra months. If time is really that critical, focus on those 3 right now. We could worry about the other parcels as we go on, and it's an ongoing project. And I agree with some of the stuff that was said. You have some small parcels, they're not going to be much good of anything. You're not going to build you're not going to build anything on these properties. They're quarter lots or third lots. They have water outfalls in there and stuff. You can't.
There's all kinds of things that we did run into.
Yep.
Now, I'm gonna ask each of my members, they did look at different things. We did kind of break it up, and I'll start with Rudy first, what he ran into when he took a look around.
All right, I'm saving City Hall to last because a
Okay,
lot of this depends on what happens to the others. Cedar, I just went over and looked at Cedar Street where Public Works Storage is, and that building is full of maintenance department items, equipment, supplies that we use here at City Hall. That space would have to be duplicated almost in its entirety somewhere else in order to maintain that maintenance equipment. On the marina, I do have a call in to David Walker at Water and Navigation because I have some questions for him regarding docks and etc. But the primary discussion that I brought up in the last meeting was 70 spaces in that marina are dedicated parking spaces in order for us to qualify for beach renourishment.
correct.
So that really could not be used for any other purpose. If you look, Lynn has the spaces pretty much outlined. It's 100% of the lot if you consider maneuvering space. There's also a drain that runs across the center of that property. I went down and looked at that. It's primarily located pretty much in the very middle. And that might have been helpful because being in the middle you can't build over that, but at one end maybe you could do something and it would not impact that. But the 70 parking spaces makes use of that for any other purpose fairly prohibitive if we're going to qualify for beach renourishment, and I think that's critical in the city. One of the other questions that was brought up was Belle Isle, and that's primary reason I had called David Walker with Water Navigation was the proposal that be adopted for some additional marina spacing. But like I say, he hasn't returned my call yet.
Okay. I might add the addenda that research has shown that if somebody uses, and I don't think it was the first time it was approached to use a piece of designated property for parking that was qualified for our any beach renourishment on the coast, that the question was, if you did decide to do that, they could back bill you for all the construction that was done on the beach renourishment. So that's rather prohibitive, because if you finally said, I'm going to park, okay, fine, we're going to do whatever with the marina, the state could say, okay, now, we've renourished this 5 times, it cost us X million dollars, you have to reimburse us for that because you don't qualify anymore. I think there's a back billing or something that comes up that.
That I don't know.
Well, this is what I have gathered. Okay, I could be absolutely wrong, but that is the that is the feedback that I got here and there from our investigation. Okay, Brenda and Tom, I know, investigated a couple pieces, and I'd like their feedback.
Well, we also looked at the
And
Cedar.
do identify what we are on the sheet.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. We looked at the Cedar Street, we call it office storage facility. And we found the same thing, is that it seems to be well utilized. It's filled with equipment for the city and vehicles. There was an additional garage that was built, and the main house that was there, I guess originally, also had a garage. And both of those garages are housing vehicles, and they're full. And the rooms, I don't think that there was a kitchen. I think the kitchen was taken out. In other words, in order to take that piece of property and turn it into something you could sell, you'd have to invest a serious amount of money into it. And it's well utilized right now, so you wouldn't, you'd have to put that equipment and those vehicles someplace else. You'd probably have to build a building, and I don't know that you'd be ahead of anything by doing that.
And it also would involve new insurance, new investigation, new everything. On the same
Yeah, I kind of thought in the beginning when we were talking, that would be an easy flip and some easy money to acquire, but when we went in and looked at it, it's nice and neat, it's being utilized the way it should be. We would have to put up a prefab building somewhere close on this property, and it's working. And there's one bathroom in there. The kitchen is non-existent, so you'd have to get in there and do major remodeling even to put it up for sale. I say it's fine the way it's utilized right now. It's nice and neat. Anyway,
So your conclusion of the committee is that it's serving its purpose
It is.
to the city?
it is.
Rudy,
Yeah.
same way?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Lynn, is there any observations that you may want to add at all?
No, the house was bought, just to kind of give you a little background, the house was bought we converted it into a city hall for temporary use.
I remember.
And then there was a plan by some of the consuls to tear it down and build a commercial structure over there for public works. Because there was always a plan in the future to build something, because what they were doing, technically everything was sitting outside and it was rusting away. Until we built that second garage that's behind it. And the only way we could do that is because the property was institutional. So if a house,
It's zoned institution, yeah.
Yeah.
Institution.
so the issue partially is The house probably would have to be a tear down, because it's not, you know, it's got a new roof because FEMA paid for it because of the hurricane, things of that nature, but for the most part, it's in the state it was when we used it for City Hall, for the most part, and we just took out the, it appears we just took out, you know, some partition things, because there was some railings and stuff, if I recollect.
There was.
And you ended up using it as storage. But that still was a problem, and that's why we built the garage about a year and a half ago that's behind it. And that was so we could put our trucks and mowers away, so they're protected. And, you know, they last a little longer, and our equipment, because we just didn't have the space.
Thank you very much. I do know there were several properties that, I know that there's one on Belle Isle. It looks nice, but it's part of our drainage.
Two large storm.
Two large
Yeah, too
drains going from here to there, so it's impossible to do anything there. You dig there, you got a real problem. We don't want any of that situation coming up. And as far as this building goes, that's where we sit. I do have to agree with the mayor, some of these lots are so small that you'd have to get a zoning change to build a doghouse or something on them. And they're nebulous. Rudy, let's go back to your situation with what you wanted to keep for last, because I didn't find anything that, and the committee did not report back to us anything viable that didn't have a lot of restrictions on it.
Yeah, so my understanding is the council was looking at utilizing City Hall either by renting it out for other purposes or selling it to another entity, which would require a vote of the residents. The question becomes, now that we've looked at these other properties and they're not available for another facility, where would you have City Hall? Where would you have staff? Where would you have council meetings? So,
Well, I think Brenda had some, I'm sorry,
go ahead.
had some ideas on the possible utilization. of
Well,
this.
this, you know, after seeing Cedar Street and the marina, that Tom was thinking about maybe a restaurant down at the marina, but that kind of was squashed because of the parking places.
Yeah, you're gonna get penalized. is all
So we're
we-
back to City Hall, possibly a venue for weddings. And I know there's been weddings here before, but it needs to be out in the public. People need to look at it to see, or a meeting room where we rent out the big room.
I have to allude to Patty. Patty, what has been the traffic with that?
Laura does that now, so Lynn can probably, do you have a number?
Well, one of the,
Well, kind of here's what happened. At some point in time, the council raised the rental price, and prior to that, I think the business was pretty good.
Excellent.
But there was some staff here that aren't here anymore that felt that you shouldn't, the fact of the matter, when you rent it for catering events, there's things that happen that are part of doing business, you know.
absolutely.
You know, somebody drinks a little too much, they get in an argument. But that's, in that business, having been in that business a long time ago, that's part of the consequence of doing business. Well, evidently it wasn't the feeling that that's what they wanted to do, so they approached the city council about raising the price on it. And when they raised the price, Patty was here when they raised the price, I wasn't, and it it didn't, it basically dried up.
Okay,
Because, you know, you have to price it competitively, and you
Right, right.
can't overprice it basically because don't want to rent it.
understandable.
So that's kind of what happened with it. Since then, we've put the price back to the old price. We advertise it on Wedding Wire. We get a lot of contacts on it. We have people that come in and look at it. So it's at the point now where we've got to rebuild that business. And then we're also talking to people about possibly holding meetings here. And creating a different rent schedule for that, as opposed to a wedding reception, which is basically you rent the building for the whole day. And that fee is, what is it, Patty, $1,800 for a non-resident, and is it $450 for a
Yes.
resident? $450 for a resident. So, from a revenue standpoint, we've got to rebuild that, if we want to keep it. I know a couple people have come in and talked to me about renting some of the office space. But I guess you could do that, but then some doors would have to be put in. Because
Access.
access could be a problem, because the access is here,
Yeah.
okay? If you rented it for, one gentleman came in and talked to me about renting it for his doctor's office. And I said, okay, how would you get access to the building? Well, his first comment was, I'd just come through here. Well, we don't want to be in the doctor's office reception. We're not their receptionists. If you're renting the space, that's,
The multiplicity does not add to.
So to do that, what you would have to do is probably construct something somewhere as an endpoint and create another entrance into the area. As an example, maybe at the end where the Public Works is, you'd have to create another entrance there. The only fallacy with that is you'd be very limited how far you could get in, because our electrical room, computer room, all that stuff is there. The staff restrooms are there, but that wouldn't be a big deal, but you'd still have to put a doorway through there that.
And you got the fire codes and everything
Yeah,
else to worry about.
So, I don't know what that potential is really, but the only way to really find out is to have an architect look at it and say, hey, could you do this? Could you take this room and convert it to an office? Well, I guess you could, but there again, it's got to be modified. And we wouldn't want people to have access to, the city offices.
No.
So there's a couple opportunities for that, but then I guess you do everything over there.
Thank you. Is it possible, and I have to allude to the mayor, we have due diligence with this, and and some of my background, I was involved with country clubs. We had rentals, we had the weddings, we had everything in the school reunions, and everything was going on. But they provided a lot of times, if their own fees, their own food, and they signed they got their own insurance policy, and so we weren't liable for anything. They were all set up with that. And I know that's not the purview of the zoning board or us, but if that's a possibility that we could suggest to the mayor and city council to look into with another division of your committees, would be probably viable.
I'm not sure I understand what you're asking. Are you asking, there's already a provision that if you rent the hall, you have to be, for an event, you have to have insurance if there's gonna be liquor and stuff like that. So that's already an ordinance here. I'm not, I'm not sure. I mean, I think that half of the building doesn't get used that much. I know we have some exercise classes there in the morning, but, we have council meeting twice a month. Other than that, our revenue's going down over the years, it's not going up. And this council didn't raise that rate, so I guess it was a prior council that raised the rate. We also miss out on opportunities. I mean, I've been here and brought opportunities for ladies' clubs and stuff like that to meet here, yet we seem to have this one-size-fits-all thing. I mean, we have a ladies' club, they're not gonna tear the joint up, and we were trying to charge them numbers that they just couldn't afford. Perhaps when you have a group like that, you could have a real low rate, because that's gonna be easy money for you.
Well, that's a restructuring that
Yeah.
falls into your purview, not ours, right?
Right,
Okay.
again, it's how to best utilize, but if you don't mind, I want to go back to something that Mr. Davis said, because and again, we have 3 council members here. So
Absolutely.
I don't want feedback, how's that? We can talk about this at the next thing, but if we have feedback, then we're gonna have a sunshine violation, so this
I know the
is the
sunshine-
mayor talking, not
The
the
sunshine laws say you can't do that with
Right,
us
so-
and all that sort
Because
of.
if they respond to this, then, so I just want to give you my ideas, because I
Sure.
wasn't here last time, Glenn was, and Marv was not. So my idea is this, okay, I want you to think outside the box. I built my house in this city 5 years ago. I am at the time, I was in a VE zone, which means I have active wave action. I know all about pilings and how to put houses up that way, because I GC'd my own job. You're overlooking the opportunity down at that marina to put a building up on pilings and have parking underneath. You're also overlooking the opportunity to put up a small parking facility that would allow you to keep whatever we really do need to see the document for whatever the grant or, whatever the requirement was for the sand, because I don't know if it goes in perpetuity or, if there's some limit, but if we need to pick up 70 spots, you'd lose a few if you put pilings up, okay? Question is, can we make them up? I know I wasn't living in the town at the time, I owned property and I was following it. I know it was hell to try and get the spots that we had. So it may be difficult, but maybe not when you start to think about stuff like the property over here and can we repurpose it? So I think you do have an opportunity to possibly put something over there. What? I don't know. I've heard a restaurant, and that was actually, somebody brought that idea to me. I don't know if that's even a good use for it, but a restaurant, an office, an alternate city hall, set of offices, doctor's office, I don't know, something residential. I know this, okay, if you go to that, if anybody visited that marina, did you read the little plaque? I did. And that plaque says that land was dead, and I haven't had a chance to read these leases, these deeds.
We bought it.
But that thing says on that plaque that it was given in memory of a child who passed away. We used to love to come there and look at the boats. So it was given to the city so that all could enjoy that. Right now, 17, 18 people are enjoying it, and the rest of us can't even walk on that boardwalk without trespassing. So I don't get to enjoy the marina, I don't have a boat there. I mean, you can sit in the parking lot if you want and look through the boats, but I don't know that that purpose of that is really being fulfilled by us being in a marina business. So I'm not saying we should not be renting out boat slips, but I would like to see some use that maybe the entire community would benefit from, because right now, there's about half of those boat slips are being used by Bel Air Beach people, maybe a little more than half. And other than that, no one's from Bel Air Beach using that.
Well, I can see a conflict, because if you build something there on top where they go to park, and will the state still say, you have these spaces available? No, there's 60 people at a dinner. You just lost your spaces. There's some conflicts there that I don't know.
That's why we need.
It's very complicated.
Because I know you probably use City Hall as part of the spots too.
No.
You didn't use City Hall?
Can't.
Use City Hall, is that
Can't.
possible? You can't use
Within
City
range.
It's not within the
Close
range.
enough, yeah.
What the requirements are, it has to be within a quarter mile
Of the beach.
of the beach. So, probably 20 years ago, it was a different story, and now what they've done, they've tightened it up because the money is so tight for beach renourishment. Like right now, we're getting all the easements, because if we don't get them, they're not gonna renourish. But the spaces are a requirement. That's why we had to add spaces to Morgan Park to meet the demand of the beach renourishment. So the city committed, and they have a map that talks about the commitment for the, how many spaces were committed for the last renourishment.
And the bicycle spots.
And they put in the bicycle racks at some point in time, and they got some credit for that. So initially, the marina was the only place they had to have spots. And then people changed in the state, people changed at the Corps of Engineers, and they said, you're misreading the regulations. You gotta do this, 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 this.
And
So-
Morgan Park fell into.
Right, so the marina is committed to 70 spots. Morgan, by the last renourishment, was committed to, I think it was 19, and now we have 29 because we were short. So we had to add those spaces, and we did by shrinking the parking spaces in Morgan Park from 10 feet to 9 feet and making some compact things.
That was
And-
genius.
Well,
It was.
architect did that for us, or engineer, whoever. But anyway, so we're okay right now. But and it's not saying that you can't have parking spaces up in the air. You could build a parking garage, okay? That's not saying you couldn't do that. But if you build a parking garage, then you got an issue with the stormwater pond that you would have to build, and that would be a requirement of the water management district. They would require you to build a stormwater pond on that property if you put in impervious surface or a building or a commercial building. So a parking garage wouldn't eliminate the spaces, and I guess if it's elevated and the bottom was left, you could build a stormwater pond under a parking garage. I mean, you've got to be kind of think outside the box to do that, or vault or something. I don't know about a vault that close to the water. Maybe. It's just kind of where it's at. So the spaces are the issue.
Allocated.
Yeah.
We know.
But I'm not saying you couldn't reconfigure those spaces and be creative. You could. You could probably get a little creative, with some crayons. We got some extra crayons, so we could probably do that.
But what I'm hearing is the purpose, as I understand it, is we're trying to find revenue for the city because we're gonna have a shortfall in revenue. But everything you're talking about requires spending more money
That's correct.
to get where, it's catch-22 there.
Yeah, no, you would have to spend more money. I mean, there's limitations. I mean, Bayside Park is a FCT grant. It basically the property runs, if you look at the deeds and the drawings, it basically runs across the porch of City Hall. So basically, that's the property line, so the city would have to try to buy that out if Florida Communities Trust would even sell it to us if we wanted to convert it to another use.
When we were originally talking about building this building, I had made a suggestion once about building it as a two-story with
Tom, give
medical
that to
offices
Pat.
on the ground floor and City Hall on the second floor, and that didn't seem to gain any traction, but I'd bring that back up as probably the simplest thing you could do right now. With your dedication of the marina property and so forth here, if you went to a second floor here, you would not need more retention area because you're not increasing
Right.
the footprint. You've already got the retention pond over by
Right.
the tennis courts. I'm pretty sure this building, the way it was built with 150 mile an hour standards, could hold a second floor. and then you could just rededicate the bottom space for retail rental or medical. I always thought medical because it would serve the public in this area better, in the city better than any other purpose, less subjective, quieter, etc. So that would be huge revenue.
That's all, spend money to make money.
But it's probably easier to do than a whole new building down at the other end with a retention pond issue and a drainage across the middle of the property that you can't build over.
Glenn, you had your
Yeah,
question.
if I could just make a couple points. City Manager Lynn Reeves has kind of touched on this concept of lateral thinking. That's basically, sometimes you run into stuff and you gotta kind of move sideways and find workarounds for some of this stuff. I'm kind of at a disadvantage. I don't have your parking chart for the marina. All I've heard is this number 70, and I don't know what's the number in the denominator. What percentage of the available parking area is the 70 spaces?
It's 100%,
100%?
pretty much 100%.
100% of the lot.
Okay.
And we had to kind of shrink the spots in the Morgan Park to make their new commitment.
Well, this is the map that we got from the county.
And they're marked in red.
Okay,
Parking.
I'll take a look at that stuff then. You know, I'm hearing a lot of subjective stuff and not a lot of
Rudy.
analysis here.
Did you
For
give me a
instance,
copy?
let me ask you a question here is, let me ask you, what is the debt service on this building every month?
Well, the only reference I have is your council meeting comment that the debt service is 9% of
Well,
revenue.
let's put it in real numbers, okay? The debt service every month for this building is $16,000 a month, okay? The rentals we take in from weddings is how much? $17,000 per year, okay? So I haven't heard any kind of analysis on the utilization of this building. Like, I mean, how much is this building really being utilized and what are we getting out of that sort of stuff? I want to hear some real analysis of this stuff, not just subjective stuff like, well, for instance, the White House out there, okay? We would have to recondition it to sell it, well, or just sell it as is. My question is what is the property worth? And then you can start looking at other alternatives. Let's say you wanted to build another building somewhere. Well, are the constraints, you know, obviously there's a competitive edge because the White House is very close to this building. So is that a necessity? I don't know. What are the constraints around that building and its use and its purpose? I'm not seeing a lot of analysis that
Well, the utilization is, I don't think, lies with this board at all.
Well, and I'm starting to,
We are zoning,
we can go back to your charter and look at what specifically we asked of you. And, you know, I guess what I'm starting to, I'm seeing a huge dichotomy. I sat in on another committee's meeting earlier this week, and there was a lot of lateral thinking. What if this, what if that? And people are starting to thinking. I can facetiously say we've been paying this board for the last 2 years and haven't really asked anything of you. Well, now we're asking you to put on your thinking caps, do some lateral thinking for us, run some alternatives. What are the pluses and minuses of this idea? What would be the cost of doing it this way or doing it that way? Well, that one falls out. I'm asking you, the council has asked of you to put on your thinking caps and engage on some of this stuff.
Isn't a lot of the stuff that you're asking for, doesn't that require some people with talents that we don't have? Engineering,
Well,
party
I
management?
think your biggest asset is sitting here in the green shirt, because as you come up with ideas, you could say, hey, city manager, what do you think it would cost to do this? What would be the ups and downs of this? I mean, just kicking around ideas. I mean, this guy's a great resource. He's been around a long time and has a good network, and if he doesn't have an answer for you, he knows where to go to tap into the system and get answers. And again, we're not looking down to 2 digits and pennies, we're just kind of, what's a rough order of magnitude? Well, it would probably cost, you know, $500,000, it costs $1.5 million, who knows? I mean,
Doesn't some of this lie with the council, rather than a board of the zoning board?
Well, the problem there is, okay, there's 7 people there, and there's a lot of issues that they're juggling in the air right now. We've come to you with some specific questions and asked for your assistance.
Well, we delivered the utilization of what the properties are, where the deeds are, and et cetera. Not what the use that could be in the future, or what we could gain if we sold.
I think if we go back to that charter, and I can pull it out because I have a copy of it, it asks for recommendations and to give us some ideas. All I'm hearing here, I guess, is why we can't do stuff. And a subjective, well, we don't think that's gonna work. Well, where's the data, where's the alternatives, what are the ideas behind it? I see where this is going, and I'm at the point where, okay, thank you very much, we'll take the deeds and hand it off to the other committee and see what they can come up with. Or you can get engaged on this thing and give us your recommendations. Okay? Hey, I hate to.
Well, we delivered the deeds, we delivered the restrictions, we delivered the legalities. That's what the mayor asked us to do.
What's the number council wants us to come up with
Let me.
that resolves your issues?
I don't wanna, we're not supposed to, I'm not even gonna say whether I agree or disagree with Vice Mayor. I was the one who, I guess, came up initially with this idea, and council adopted it, and the idea, and it is in your charter, and it was in the charter that we gave you, it is to come up with the best use. And so I heard an idea here today that, and I've been thinking about this and I've spoken with people, and I heard an idea that I've never heard before. Rudy Davis, great idea. I've never even thought about a second floor to this building. I don't know if it's possible. I don't know what, yes, you have to spend money, of course you do. Look how much money they just spent across the bridge redoing the shopping center, okay? They spent a lot of money, and they're gonna have a much higher class shopping center when that thing gets done. So I don't know if whether it's viable, whether it makes economic sense or not, that's what we have to decide. But that's a possibility that I never heard before. I threw one to you today saying, you put everything up on pilings and you put your parking down below, and if you have to put lifts, or you have to put a parking garage or something like that, it may be able to be done. I can make one telephone call, and I can have the guy who's redoing all of Treasure Island, or making the plans to redo all of Treasure Island, I can have that firm here like that, okay, to look at that property. So that's what I want to hear is, hey, council, we need this information, because he's redoing like 4 city blocks. This is child's play, I think. Maybe nothing can be done. I don't know. I haven't seen this year's. This council hasn't signed off on how many spots we need, and what the requirements are, and whether it makes sense or not to sign off on it. It probably does. We want to keep the renourishment going. But, I mean, we've got something that nobody else has. What is that, an acre? An acre of property across the street from the water? Who else has that here? I mean, I think there's one property in Reddington that has that. There's not many. That's pretty damn valuable. So I gotta think that there's something that can be done with that, that we may be able to be done. And yeah, maybe we have to spend some money. As for putting a kitchen in the White House, hey, you're not getting the kitchen that I have in my house. You're getting the Home Depot special with Formica countertops and, the basic setup stuff. You could put a kitchen in there for very little if you want to bring it up or sell it as is. Somebody will pop a kitchen on the property. People buy houses that are destroyed. That house, I've never been inside it, but I think it's in good shape from what I understand. So,
Okay.
So, and again, is there an alternate place to store that stuff, the stuff that's in there? I don't disagree that we need places to store our vehicles and stuff like that, but, I think we're, if there's, I don't know what else is in there, archive, city storage stuff, you might be able to get storage outside of this building. So, a lot of ideas, I think, that are possibilities over here. That, to me, is $400,000 of revenue that, may just be viable to do. And if we can build a steel hut to put cars in, well, it's not gonna cost us $400,000. for that.
Comments from the board? Tom, you wanted to say something?
No, I was
Okay.
agreeing.
Well, I think you'd have to, first of all, I think, you know, to your comment about that place, an appraisal of that place, really the value is only the land. That's all it is, okay? It's not the building, and it would be a non-conforming sale, so they'd have to tear it down because it does not meet the requirements. The only way we could put the garage on there, which we spent about $100,000 to do that, was because it was institutional property. So that garage that's a couple years old, whoever bought it, based on us, they wouldn't. And then the lot replat is another issue, because now it's platted to City Hall, okay? So our code says to build a house on a replatted lot, it has to be, or the lot has to be 10,000, I think it's 980 square feet. Well, that lot's not even close to that. So, you know, I'm just kind of relaying some information there. So maybe the value of that vacant lot's 250,000 maybe. I don't think it's worth probably much more than that. There's no view. It's very compact, and you know, we'd have to explore that possibility if we wanted to sell it. So if we wanted to sell it, the first issue would be, could somebody build something there? There'd have to be some research, you know, with the plat to see, because it was replatted into this thing.
From what I hear from the board, it's not the recommendation to sell it because it's being utilized quite,
Well, from this group it isn't. You know, it's been brought up to sell it. I've heard it from a couple council members that they think we could build somewhere else. Well, first issue is you got to find out where you're going to build it. That's the first issue. Second issue, the money is an issue, but in the scheme of things, if you're going to sell something for $250, if you've got another place to build it, which unfortunately we really don't have, because the city doesn't own any other property of any magnitude and size. But if the city wants to sell it, then we just put the equipment outside and.
I don't think that's the point. I think, I mean, you are touching on exactly the analysis we're talking about is, okay, if we got rid of that property, it's only worth this. If we were to replace it in kind, this is the cost, and exactly where do we do it? So you have built a logical argument to say no. So we scratch that one off the list, but we don't just say it's being utilized and therefore we keep it. That's my point here. So let me circle back around here. If you look at the scope of your charter, the first 1 and 2 say review and examine. Well, you've kind of done that stuff, but there's a number 3 here. It says provide recommendations to the city council on how to maximize utilization and/or income from existing properties. And that's not exactly what I'm hearing here. You've said, okay, we've reviewed and examined, we're done. Well, no, there's number 3 here, and we're looking for some recommendations built on some, it doesn't have to be engineering rigor analysis, but just, hey, we thought about this, and there's no other property available to build a warehouse to utilize for our public works. And the costs just don't add up for that.
The question is, how do you come about those costs? The analysis has to be done, but then maybe there's one member here who could do the analysis, but we don't do engineering analysis,
Well, no,
cost
no.
analysis.
And I would be happy to-
You need to find some people that you got to pay some money to, that are gonna go in there and do the engineering. If you wanna come up with a decision that this is too much and this is enough money, and and I'm gonna spend this much money, I'm gonna make this much money, and the difference is so much, okay, great, let's go do it. You're talking about a real analysis.
Well,
And I think that you've gotten 4 different recommendations from this committee, and I don't think anything was thrown on the ground and stomped on. We were going through positive and negatives. Now, you took the negatives as being don't do it. I didn't hear that. I heard that there are some positive and negatives, and some analysis has to be done to go forward with it. I didn't think anything was taken off the table. And that was a great idea, the second story here. I hadn't even thought about that.
and I think it is.
And that is gonna not gonna be cheap, and you can't pull that out of your butt. You need to go and you need to do the analysis, and you need to get the right people to do the analysis. And there's enough money possibly there to be worthwhile to get the right people on that job. Building the, and doing the marina, building the restaurant or whatever. I think a restaurant would be a good idea in the marina. I think it would add to the value of the, not only the property, but also of the beach experience, whatever. You could have people that are going to the beach and they come up to the restaurant. Now, the fact that we could put it up on a garage or whatever, I think there too, there's possible downsides to that. But are we the expert, or do we have, maybe we do have experts here. But I think that all these things need to go the next step. The analysis needs to be done, and it's not gonna be something that we have the expertise here to do.
You're right to a certain extent. What I'll give you is that it's quite easy to understand. You've lived here for X number of years, so you know about what the property values are here. So if we were to replace that building, we need a property that size, well, there's a cost to that. This guy can give you a rough order of magnitude what it costs to build something for that. We're looking for an idea, rough idea of what the cost will be. And then if the costs are close, that's where we may have to go out to get some expert opinions on this stuff. But for instance, try to figure out what the utilization of this building is. Well, you got X number of people here, you got X number of office spaces that are used on a 100% basis. You can kind of figure out what the utilization is. Well, it's costing us $16,000 a month, so what's it cost for the office space for 8 people and maybe a partial use of the council chambers for a wedding? You can kind of figure that out. And then you can go online and probably pull up some numbers for what a reasonable number is for a space in this area that generates income. So if you have X number of square feet of space available, what are commercial buildings pulling in?
Glenn, this all sounds good, but we're not with that expertise. He doesn't work for us, he works for the city. Don't you know? That's just a fact. And I know that there's a restriction that there's only one business that was grandfathered in the city limits. That'd take another ordinance change and everything else that we're not familiar with.
Perhaps another committee.
That's a legal matter. It is not in our purview whatsoever. And that's not a fact that we have to present to you, it's a known fact. That ordinance exists. I've known it since I've lived here. And I'm sure the mayor is very well aware of that.
So,
So
a question for you.
we
I'm
are,
sorry.
yeah, we are
Talking about
delivering.
with the planning, the zoning, is council in charge of zoning, rezoning?
We would go to Pinellas County and have to submit a application to the planning group. Because anyone that would buy, let's say you decided you want to sell this building, okay? Let's just say that, okay? Well, it's institutional, so whatever falls in that purview, which I believe it's mainly government, not anything else, so you would have to rezone it. The city would make the application.
The city makes it, and then
Yeah.
Pinellas has to sign off on it.
Yeah.
So that would go for the White House then too, right?
Yeah, we went through that. I mean, I've got the documentation where the city, after this building was built, rezoned that property to institutional for to use it. Because at the time this building was built, there was discussion about building there was even a discussion about building on piles and putting,
Parking out there.
putting parking and public
Underneath.
works underneath it. Yeah, so, but, you know, the cost, it became a cost issue, because,
We were adamant we were not exceeding $3 million.
yeah, that's part of what you've got here. And, you know, I'm not debating that there isn't some space here that's not utilized, I'm not debating that. But if you want to reconfigure it, then someone's got to say, okay, first of all, and there's nothing that says we couldn't rent out a section with changing nothing. But it's a trade-off, as an example. If you wanted to cut the console chambers in half, which is a possibility, if you wanted to cut the console chambers in half and try to rent the space at the other end, well, then you've eliminated, for the most part, other than very small groups, rental opportunities, okay? If you wanted to rent this is probably the most viable thing you could rent, this space here, because you wouldn't have to do much.
It's true.
You know, that door could stay there, we'd just maybe change the door so it's solid or something. But this room, yeah, you could probably rent it to somebody. But renting that back section of the offices, then you're gonna have to create another entrance system. That's just how it works, you know. So, you know, maybe the group needs to have a little more discussion on those things, you know, and,
But we need some fact finders.
well,
We can have a discussion, but we need to sit
you know, if
down.
I came back to you with, okay, if I asked somebody to just give me a rough estimate from I'll just say from a realtor, for lack of a better word, I can get a realtor and say, okay, what's the value of that house over there if I wanted to sell it today? Okay, well, I'd venture to say the value of that house is probably the lot, nothing else, because the house.
It's a tear down.
Yeah, it's a tear down. And you're not gonna get a great value like you might get. I mean, there's a lot on, is it 17th? Even the one on 9th, I think, is only like 380. But those are bigger lots. So, same with the marina. Okay, if I said to a realtor, I want to sell this marina, I don't care about anything, just tell me what this is worth. But then the thing you have to look at is, how does the city create the re-nourishment spaces somewhere else? Because I guarantee you that the residents would go, the condos for sure would go ballistic if you told them you weren't gonna re-nourish their beach. You know, so you gotta figure that out. So, and realistically, there is no property, unless you know something I don't know.
Well, we think of the marina as one chunk of property, and it's really two. You've got the dock spaces there, and you've got the parking lot. So what if you sold off the dock space, the marina portion of it? I mean, what does that contribute to the city's bottom line? The net is like 40 plus.
Well, no, if you're saying sell off the dock slips,
Divide it, right?
yes,
So
yeah.
you keep your 70
spaces.
spaces for.
No, that's a possibility.
Yeah.
Instead of renting them, you just sell them off.
And
But,
that's,
but-
those are the ideas.
but you have to look at, okay,
You gotta have access and egress and.
no, that's not the issue there. The issue would be, first of all, okay, over the long term, what is the value of that dock? Okay, is it 25,000, 30,000? Is it 100,000? Okay. And if it's 25,000, well, there's 15 of them, right, Patty? 15, 16? 50?
19.
19, okay. I got too many numbers in my head.
Yeah, you know, one of the mistakes we're making is thinking it has to be city money to develop this property. Well, not necessarily.
No.
If you bring in a developer to throw down the cash to develop it, and we get a cut in that, who's not to say you can't generate a recurring revenue for the city based on an operation that we bring in and just give them the property?
Well, maybe what I can do is, let me make some phone calls, and I can bring back to you guys some comments. I can ask the engineering firm, is it possible with the footings that are here to even put a second story? May not be, you know, I mean, the engineering firm that did it's still around.
Margaret Charlie?
Yeah, I can call Ward up, I'm sure you'd tell me. I mean, you know Ward, but.
Well, that's the expertise we don't have.
Right, right.
Yeah, so maybe if I do some things like that and bring it to the committee, then you've got some things to throw around.
Fine.
Is the
But
city
I
still?
want you to still, I would want, and I don't know if the city council, this is just my opinion, I'd still want you to come back with some ideas and thoughts of what you could do if there was this blank sheet of paper here, if you could just dream, okay? I'd want that comments from you, if you could just dream. I dream a lot, but some of my dreams are kind of crazy.
Well, there's only a few to dream about.
Well, no, I'm saying on a parcel. You know, you have to think about, it's kind of like, which I'd never hit, throw it at a dartboard, and it's like spaghetti, you throw it on the wall, if it sticks, hey, that might be an opportunity. But nothing is not an opportunity. So I guess what I'd ask the group to do is just have some thought on, and it may be cockamamie as all get out, but it might be a thought that's feasible. I mean, we had a thought the other night from the finance committee, and I've thought about that, not from the finance committee, it's from one of the council members. And I've thought about it, but I figured Bellar Beach would never let me do that. Park RVs and boats in a section of the marina and reconfigure the parking, because there's good revenue in that. But my thought on it was, they probably wouldn't like that idea, even though somewhere I was at before, I made a lot of money on that, you know, and it's free money, and all you're doing is renting the square right here, you know. But there's some expense to that too. You need to screen it, because I wouldn't want to. I'd want a screening around it so you didn't, you know, it didn't impact the city's what do you want to call it? Aesthetics.
But
You know?
so someone has already made the analysis of the parking lot at Marina, that you can only put 70 parking
Well,
places in.
That was the county. The county did that because the map that you have came from the county. It's documentation they have to provide to the Corps of Engineers in the state of Florida at a time period for the next beach renourishment, okay? The city had to commit to those spaces, okay? So I'm not saying that those 70 dots are perfect. I don't know if they are or not, but you know, you could look at, they may not be perfect. And it may be that I mean, I don't think I don't think a developer would come in here and build a parking garage for you, because I don't think the revenue's there, you know. We know what the revenue for parking at the marina is, it's negligible, but the marine rental is $50,000 a year, or $43,000, I think, net income every year after we pay our expenses. So, you know, those are some things that,
So here's the alternative is, if you lost those 70 spaces and lost beach renourishment, what would it cost the city to renourish our beaches?
You'd be
So-
back billed for all the renourishment.
That's my point, so the cost of
Millions.
building a garage is relatively cheap compared to having to renourish or lose, it's a lost opportunity cost there, so you gotta kind of think of it in those terms.
Yeah,
So, I mean, there's.
that's kind of where I'm at, like,
Yeah,
hey,
there's a lot of
come
ways
up
to
with
think about
some
this stuff.
crazy stuff.
The other thing is, we have, I said it much earlier, we have to see, I want to see that document from the state that mandates the creation of the 70 spaces. Does it have to be there? What's the rule? Is it in
more than
perpetuity? I
70.
can't believe that for the rest of Bel Air Beach's existence, 200 years from now, we still have to do that, or they're gonna back bill us. That doesn't sound right.
No,
to
no,
me.
I'm not, I
That
don't
doesn't
know
sound
about
right. I mean,
back billing,
right.
but
I mean, you may not get future renourishment, but,
that's what you wouldn't get.
right, that I would understand, and I'm not advocating that that's the right way to go, although Bel Air Shore has never renourished in, history, so.
Well, that's because they don't want to provide parking.
Exactly,
And
so.
my understanding of that renourishment grant was that was the initial outlay. What we had to agree to was to give those spaces, but in order to get that, but we would not have to continue with that.
Yes, you
But
have
that's only what somebody told me at the Florida League of Cities when we were there.
No, you have to continue,
That's not correct.
Yeah, you have to keep it up.
yeah, you have to keep the parking spaces. It's part of the rule from the state. That is the rule from the state.
Okay.
You have to keep the parking spaces for the next renourishment cycle. If I went to the county and said, hey, we're gonna do away with them parking spaces, they'd probably tell me, well, you're not gonna get renourished. And we're talking millions of dollars in renourishment costs.
And the revolt from the condos along the beach.
Well, I think there would be a revolt from
A lot of people.
not just the condos. I think the people that use the beach regularly, I understand Bel Air Shore, but they don't want nothing to do with it, even though they get part of our sand every time.
They get Indian Rocks Beach is saying.
Huh?
Yeah,
Well, they get part of ours too,
right.
but they have a reason for not wanting it. They don't even want you behind their house.
Yeah, they want to-
So,
That's
Because I
true.
do agree with you when you say that if we start putting hard surfaces in, that we have to have, per surface acre, we have to have a certain amount of retention for the runoff.
That's a requirement.
That's a requirement. I do understand that, do know that, yes.
yeah.
Okay, we're getting a little off far field.
So, I guess what I would ask, you've done the stuff, I would ask for you whenever you schedule your next meeting, you come up with what I asked about
What you
creativity,
suggest. Yeah.
creativity, and don't, just because it sounds crazy, just tell us. And I think that would be important to the city council. And I will do a couple things to try to get some,
Then you'll get back to me on some situation.
yeah, I'll ask some people for some property value over there, and I've got a couple friends that are developers that I can call and say, hey, is this viable to develop anything here?
I've got a question about the 70 parking spaces. I know a lot of these cut-throughs, like in Indian Rocks Beach and up here that go over to the beach, they've got parking spaces, and they have to make so many available to the public
Yes.
to use. But who polices that? I mean, if you have 10 spaces, is it the residents can't use 5 of them and it's only open to the
No,
public?
that's
Or is that you've
considered
got 10
public.
spaces and you can't throw the public out?
No.
Which
it's-
means it's dual use.
Yeah, it is dual use.
So at the marina, could it be, you've got all these people parking there for their boats, and they're not allowed to park there anymore for their boats because it takes up some of the 70 parking spaces?
No.
So there's some sort of
What you're doing is showing on paper, what the county did on that map is showed the state that the city was committed to 70 spaces at that time. And I know I can tell you this because I know that for a fact, that the state got really a lot tougher on the requirements of the parking, the state did. because many, many years ago, what was his name? Terry, I think, Jim Terry. Seems like you might remember him, Rudy, but there was a guy that was the beach renourishment guy at the county, and he kind of like, oh yeah, you're okay. And
Remember that.
then it changed
You aren't
To-
okay.
to Nicole Elko. Do you remember that name? And she got tough on it and said, you gotta play by the rules. And so they've just gotten tougher and tougher and tougher. And so I'll make sure that I'll get a copy of the rule, so you have that, and I'll make sure it gets to the council. I can probably pull that up. I probably have it somewhere in
We
my
need to
file.
validate that. Have we ever gone back and validated their calculations of how they come up with the number?
Well, I've talked to John Bishop about it, and, you know, it's still valid, you know.
You satisfied?
And actually, I
With,
think that map, I don't know if I brought that, or
yeah.
What
it
about
might
the
be in my
kid?
other file. I got files on beach renourishment.
Okay, yeah, if you give us the rules and all that good stuff.
The other thing I would like
Except
to
for some
mention
direction
is,
as to where we
if
can-
you're
where
looking
we should
to
go.
possibly put a restaurant down there,
Sure.
you can put a retention pond under it, and it's been done.
Hold it a
And-
minute,
and
hold it a
If you
minute.
go down to
Just-
Park and Seminole Boulevard, there is a
Hold it.
restaurant there with one.
No, you can put yeah, but I'll come back to you with that stuff. I mean, you can put retention ponds a lot of places. You can put vaults in. I don't know if the closeness to the water has any effect on that, a vault, you know, because I would think that the moisture level is pretty high there. So that may be an issue. But no, there are buildings around, I know of some where I used to work that have vaults under them.
Lynn, as we stand, you'll get some feedback for us.
Yeah, so if you want to schedule, you know, another meeting,
I will.
and then I'll get the stuff I told you about. I'll have somebody kind of give me a little price value of the lot next door, or not the lot,
The White House.
the White House, as everybody calls it. Doesn't have security around it like the White House, but whatever.
A fountain in the front either.
I have a
Or
question.
service
If you can add this to your information, is the city still in a position that it has no borrowing ability because of the
No, we have
debt
borrowing,
service we have?
no,
Has
we
that
have
changed?
borrowing, we have borrowing ability.
All right, and then what is the amount council is looking for us to generate with these ideas?
You don't have a number?
I've never heard a number for that.
Well, can you work on that number for us, Lynn?
Some ballpark, I mean.
We're having the council's having a work session next week. I'll ask them if they have that number.
Okay,
They may not. I don't think they do.
This helps us understand what we need to come up with, or the scope of what we're thinking about here.
And, you know, I'll talk to the architect and engineer that built this building. I'll talk to Ward and see what he tells me, if it's even capable. I mean, I have the engineered drawings of this building, but I don't know if the footers would
it's up to
allow.
date or not, right?
Yeah, yeah. But that's not to say it can't be done, because,
Well, I know we put huge amount of concrete pilings in
Yeah.
here,
yeah.
huge amount,
No, I know they're there. I just don't know
capacity.
if the capacity is
Might
there.
support another story.
You know, you may have to put more capacity, and that can be done too, you know, but there's a cost to that.
Okay.
And then,
But I like those ideas personally because it's recurring revenue. The idea of even selling that piece of property over, that's a one-time deal. You sold it, it's gone.
Yeah, right, can't get it back. You're creating a problem for an inconsequential amount of money.
And I'd like to point out the very last slip at the marina, at the farthest point, is not being used. And I don't know why, I think maybe because it's very outdated or
That
something.
fall.
It's the outfall.
Okay, all right, so that's not being used, so when you look at whatever you're looking at or thinking about, I just wanted to make sure you knew that last slip is not being used. So
And what
that
was
leaves
the-
an area there.
Excuse
It's
me.
the outfall and it's a very small slip. It's got limitations.
What was the reason we'd brought it up before down at the marina of actually, we have some land there, underwater land, what do they call it?
Yeah, submerged land.
Submerged.
Yeah. That at one point it was suggested we put a finger out,
A VDOC.
a VDOC and put it out.
Mhm.
What was the objection to that? Because that's ongoing revenue.
Well, at the time, I guess, it was cost. I did visit Dave Walker with that concept, and he thought it possibly could be done, but he had some concerns about the navigable water there.
It's awful narrow.
Yeah, it's pretty narrow, but I actually, yeah, I've got a drawing of that. The Woods Consulting did that,
Yeah, we need to revisit that.
you know, where they put a VDOC out. You lost some of the interior, I think it was 3 or 4 of the slips interiorly at the north end, because you couldn't get in them. And I think you gained, I can't remember how many you gained, but I can pull that out. That's something I have,
Ballpark, 10, 20, 30?
20 maybe.
And there is an actual grant, now, I do my homework on this because that falls under the parks realm. There is an actual grant out there for putting in new docks right now as we speak. So, you know, there is, just like the beach renourishment, there is some ties to it as to what you can do. But no, there is one out there that we might want to take a look at when he talks about that.
Lynn, all that submerged land from 1st to 7th, I didn't even know that was submerged land. Is it unbuildable basically, or can you do that same V-dock idea coming off the 7th Street dock, which is pretty much, you know, I can put my kayak next to it, you can't do much
It's
with
pretty
it.
shallow.
It is shallow.
Yeah.
But I mean, is there, you know,
Well, no, we even talked about
is
putting
dredging
up,
permitted? I mean, again, thinking outside the box, that's, if we own that submerged land, you know, and particularly, I could understand, you know, of course, people have a view, they're gonna say, no, don't block my view. Nobody has a view on that park, okay, so there's nothing stopping us, I don't know how far it goes, but, you know, you can.
no, it's a pretty big, not from 7th, it's not very good because of that Bird Island and that, I mean,
Yeah.
if you go down there low tide, you can almost walk between.
Yeah.
You know that.
Exactly.
Did the Army Corps of Engineers years ago come through there and redredge that and?
No,
and
the
make
county,
that-
the county
The
redredged,
county
the
did?
county redredged out here,
Okay.
probably in,
My God, that was
2005, 6, something like that.
2006.
Yeah, because it filled in. And, you know, we did talk about at one time trying to do more of a mooring field out here on this. But, you know, and I guess that's possible, you know, because we own the submerged lands out.
Lynn, could you shoot to us some of your ideas also?
Well, some of my ideas are kind of crazy.
Well, but it's crazy ideas is,
Right, Glenn? I come up with some harebrained.
You know, the fruitful recommendations that come out of this project has a direct and lasting impact on our taxes, our user fees, and whatever assessments and bonds we float in the future to repair things. The money, the city takes in money and revenues, we have operating expenses that are, I mean, we've been through them, we can't shave them much closer. The expansion joint in all of this is the capital improvements and fixing the infrastructure. In other words, paving our streets, putting in new street lights, taking out the old poles, undergrounding things. That's the expansion joint in all of this. And we have this big amount of money in our piggy bank right now because we've been deferring projects. Well, depending on how we spend that money over the next couple of years, how much we spend this year to pave streets, how much we spend this year to fix stormwater problems, that piggy bank is burning down, and we've kind of figured out that in 3 or 4 years, we've used up all that money. So what we're looking for is a recurring revenue increase. You know, take a look around. Anything you can come up with that bears fruit has a direct impact in all of our future taxes. You know, yeah, we want to keep the millage rate the same. We don't want to increase our taxes. Well, you've got a say in that right now. How do we do that? Well, look for,
Any amount would help.
yeah, any amount.
Any amount. There was no number ever put on this, it's just you come up with an idea and it works, it's positive.
Well, and the thing I'd like to add in is anytime we increase our property values, we're increasing our tax revenue for the city. So when we look at projects and things like that, we should be always looking at things that are going to enrich the city, each resident's home's property, because when their property value raises, we actually get more revenue dollars for the city. So that's something we should be looking at.
I think we're well aware of that.
I have to bring something up sitting over in the corner. And I'm looking at the guy at the head of the table down there. You have a nice empty lot next to you. Maybe you'd like to buy it.
To do what with it?
I don't know, whatever you wish.
Lower my taxes.
What?
Lower my taxes.
It's taxable.
If you buy it, that's less maintenance, and then it's more taxes you pay, and we'd be happy about that.
Or maybe
You could share
properties
that
will
with
be
your
sold.
neighbor, split it in half.
Yeah.
I'd imagine there's a number of lots.
And it would, the reselling of
Better
your
probably
property
in
would
that
increase
class.
tremendously.
Well, the problem
spent
is their drainage.
$22,400 getting a new wall and everything taken care of down there when that hurricane came through.
Yeah, we could move the fence over and all that would be.
Will you move the fence over and donate the property?
Well, no, we can't donate.
But
The whole
if they're
idea
drainage,
is
can
revenue.
they still be sold
Hold it.
and not?
I can
built?
remember the time it blew over. When I called Lynn and I said, your wall fell over, and he said, that's not my wall. So that made a lot of sense to me, I guess.
No, it wasn't, Lynn.
Okay, all joking aside, I know everybody's concerned about finances, et cetera. Is there any further comments from the board?
Look at the next meeting day.
Nothing?
No.
No meeting, date? How about the 19th of February?
But I'd like to sit in and hear,
What day is that?
The
19th?
19th,
Wait a minute.
what day?
What?
What day is that?
I would like to sit in and hear a discussion
That's the work
at the
session.
level
6
of
o'clock.
the
Work
engineering,
session, I know, work
the
session.
cost analysis and all that, which definitely has to be done by
That's your
people,
job.
and I'll be there.
Okay. Lynn, here's your man to bring him up to date on this kind of situation.
Or just sit in on the meetings and just to get an idea of what we're talking about as far as the cost to build something and
Yeah, some of it will be a phone call, but some of it I'll have somebody come. But if I have any meetings, I
yeah,
don't have a phone call.
Thomas' background is there
Okay,
for
Yeah.
the committee.
that's not a problem.
I have an engineering background, so you can,
No, he has the background.
Okay.
Oh,
So,
so you were sandbagging us. You do have the expertise, you were sandbagging
I
us.
get rid of this shit.
I'm out of business though. I'm retired, I don't do engineering anymore, but I can understand it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Same time? Is that?
3 o'clock, if it's okay. Mayor, are you,
February 19th.
At
It's
3
the same
p.m.
day as that work session.
One second. The council invited, actually requested that there be monthly updates, and we haven't received them. And it's nice that half the council is here this time. No one, Glenn Dunn was here last time. So we haven't had an update to the general council at our session. So I'm going to invite you on behalf of council to come and do that update, because think you need to kind of keep them apprised of what's happening in your committee. The Finance Committee does this monthly, and Parks and Rec Board does it monthly. So it doesn't have to be a huge presentation, 5 minutes basically, of here's where we're at, because there's 4 people here that we can't talk to that don't know what's going on in your meeting, and I don't know if they're gonna take the time to listen to it.
Well, Rudy will bring you up to date. He's spearheading this for me, and we're all in it together. I'm a gopher, and everybody's a gopher, so
Okay,
I want to invite everyone, or thank everybody for showing up from the city. And Mayor, I want to know if you're a little satisfied with what we've been doing.
I think you're off to a good start. I think I would like to see, you know, that those ideas outside the box. I think that's where we want to go with this.
Okay.
You know,
But this
again, I
wasn't
came to
easy.
this meeting today thinking I had heard just about everything. And second story on this building, I don't know if it's possible. It's a good idea.
Well,
And
thank
anything's
you.
possible, you know, so anything's good. May not be affordable, but it may be possible. So let's throw this stuff out there, and if we've beaten all the ideas into the ground, then I think we've done our job. I know we can better utilize this building.
I
you know.
do want to tell you that the submission of our expenses will be forthcoming. And right now, there's none.
Oh, I was gonna say, the city manager approves that anyway for it. Unless you spent more than, what,
Are there any?
$2,000 or something?
No,
Okay.
not to us.
Okay.
Which just, we've been here, there, and everywhere. And Glenn was so kind to make some copies for me, for us, actually. And I supplied them to him, and I updated the city on their deeds, etc., which have disappeared. I don't know where the hell half of them are, but we have a finger on them now. And it's the result of this committee.
And you know what, if nothing comes out of this, at least we've got a handle on all of where our deeds and stuff are, which we should always have handy. you know.
Thanks.
So that, if nothing else, if, you know, that makes it worthwhile, so.
I
no, keep
appreciate
it up.
that.
You're doing good, keep up, you know, keep it forward and let's, you know, but I do wanna really come up with any possible idea.
And we'd like some feedback too. I mean,
Up to
it's,
meeting, Mr. Davis. comes
Shoot it
every
to
month.
us.
He can come and talk about the council, about this.
I mean, this is nothing that's gonna happen overnight or any damn thing else, and there's so many restrictions and so much stuff that's been going on in this city for years, and so much with the, no, you can't do this, this was a gift, no, you can't do that. Uncle Joe will get mad and reduce and pull back the deed and all kind. This stuff all exists, it's secrets, but it's there. Are there any other comments from the board members?
No.
I declare this meeting adjourned, and thank you all for your participation.
Thank you folks for your time.